Alright, so boom, what you're going to want to do first is you're going to want to start off with a sketch. I usually like to sketch out the characters first. But for this video, I'm not going to be drawing the characters, so I'm just going to leave them as stick figures. Boom, boom, boom. And then I like to start sketching the background by drawing a square first for the perspective. I'm going to move the square down a bit more. And then I have 4 lines coming out like so. This is usually where I would put the buildings in Silvyre. And I'll have 1 line going across for the gate in Silvyre. That's usually all I would do for that. Turn off the sketching of the characters layer, turn that off. And then next step is to draw and place in the assets. So I usually like to place in my night sky first. Let's say the scene's at night, I'll place this in first. And then I would place in the ground, which is usually snow. All this should be under the sketch layer so that you can see where to place everything properly. Then I'll put a road asset that I have. And now for these assets, so far I've made these. The road asset was a free asset I found on Clip Studio Assets. It's a very good place to look for 3D objects to use for your comic. Highly recommend it. So I'm not going to make the perspective on the road match too perfectly because it's just a demo, but usually I try to come in here and tweak it like so, a bit better. And if you have an image asset that you want to tweak, like how I did just now, you would want to go to the object tool right here, and then go to mode right here. If you can't find it, open up the settings. It should be in transformation settings, and then go to mode, and you want to click that icon, the eye icon, so that you can see it. So go there, go to free transform. You can tweak it slightly like so, and then after the road, let's say the scene has blood in it. So there's usually blood on the ground in Silvyre. And I'll get a brush to erase away at it. I got a cloud brush that I got off the Clip Studio Asset store, and I turned it into an eraser. And to do that, it's very simple. You go to the brush settings, go to ink, go to the blending mode, and change it to erase. It's usually right here. Okay, so now I'm done with that. This is when I will start to add in the buildings. So let me add in this one. This one I bought off of a website called Acon 3D. Then I went into an application called Blender. It's a 3D editing software, and I just duplicated a bunch of the buildings so I could stretch it out, and I imported it into Clip Studio. I could go over how to do that in another video if need be, but that's not really too important for right now. Okay, so you see how the buildings, they're not really fitting to the perspective properly. What I would then do is go into the brush settings again, go to camera, and then go to the perspective wheel here, and then zoom it out a bit. Now, if you're working on a, depending on the canvas, the perspective slider acts weird, so it might like zoom out by too much, and that's okay. You just have to feel for it. So there's no like specific number I can give you. Yeah, that's good. That's good. So I spin that around, move that up. Yeah, this is usually the hardest part, trying to get these things in position. So you see this shadow on the ground here. You get rid of that by turning off the cast shadows on ground in the subtool properties. And move it inside like so. Okay, then I have those. I usually like to put them all in one folder for the buildings. Okay, for the next asset, usually I put in the gate wall in the back, then I'll put that right here. And then I have another asset here where just the houses, but I usually put this in the background so you don't see it too much, just to fill up space to make the city look more built. And that is pretty much it. So now the next steps, let's see, create a line of the liner of the assets, right? So the buildings here look pretty flat. I don't like that, and there's a very easy way to make them look more part of a comic and not just like 3D assets. So what I do is, well, I could turn off the sketch layer now because we're done with that. What I do is I right click on the layer, the folder, convert it to a raster layer, right, like so. And then on that same raster layer that I just created, go to filter, effect, artistic, lines only. I like to put the line thickness between 20 and 15 because I realize it gives it a more normal look. Line simplicity 1, then click OK. After that, I like to duplicate that same layer that I just created as an artistic, and then go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Depending on the canvas size, it might vary, but I usually just do 15. Let's do 20 since it's a bigger canvas. Do 20. And then it still looks a bit flat, and I think that's because there's no texture on like the wall, so it's very obvious 3D. So then I also go into I have another asset here that gives it a texture. This is what it looks like. Then I'll put it on as a clipping layer, so I'll put it as multiply. And then I would lower the opacity to like around 60. Oops. And then to finish it all off, this is also a neat little trick I learned. See how the top of the houses are all orange, but in Silvyre it's snowing, so I can't have that. So what I like to do is I like to go into the object file for the object mode for the 3D layer. See apply light source. If you turn that off for both of them, and then go back to the folder that they all reside in, if you get your wand and then go to settings, see, go to fill and make sure that apply to connected pixels only, make sure that's turned off. And what that does is if you select this main orange part, it will select all the orange parts. And then what I would do after that is make a new layer, usually name it snow, and then just fill it. Now it's white. Now another thing that I could do to make the background look a bit more, not the background, the texture on the walls look a bit more realistic, and then duplicate that same texture layer that I put in, rasterize it, and then go back to artistic. Actually, I need to make sure it's at max and artistic. I could do that. I don't usually do this. I feel like it's kind of unnecessary, but it's an option. Still looks a bit flat, but don't worry. In post-process, you will see how it all comes together. Okay, for this I'm pretty much done. Yeah. Also, what I like to do is, you see how the sides of the roads, they're pretty sharp. To go with the eraser and erase it away to have it blend more into the snow. Okay, next, now is to add the shadows. So by adding shadows, usually if the background's pretty simple, this is kind of simple. So what I might just do is put all these in a background folder, and then get one file, have that as a shadow layer, and then I'll get a soft brush, and then I'll just shade everything out like this. But you see, sometimes I like to also shade in the gate wall, but sometimes it looks too flat, it seems too close. So to make it feel like it's really high up in the sky, I like to shade that as well separately. That. And I don't do this anymore, but sometimes I like to make sure I have the stars in the background fade out. Sometimes I feel it's a bit too bright. You can use black or whatever color you want for this. It's just more like a personal preference. Okay. Then after that, a mood filter. Now this is where things get fun. It's where everything starts to complete itself. So a mood filter, basically you just get a file, a layer. You get a layer and then get a color that best matches, put the layer as multiply, and then just fill the whole thing. So this is to give it that dark atmosphere. Next, make a new layer, set it as glow dodge, and get a light blue color to give a bit of lightness to the scene. From the night sky, can't be too bright, just bright enough. Then I'll make another layer for light, put that as glow dodge as well, and get a yellow color instead, and then only have it surround the places where there's supposed to be light coming from the light posts. And you can also diffuse off into the main street. That might be a bit too bright. Let me cut down on it with the eraser. Then I'll make another layer. So as you can see right here, I have the first light layer, the second one, and the third one. This first one is for the blue lighting. The third one is for the street lights. Now the second middle one, this is for like the actual light coming out of the light posts, like this. Usually I have it as like a very desaturated yellow because the light coming from the third layer is usually the one that gives it its saturation. So then I'll just pick it up like that. Oops, it's on the wrong layer. So, you know, have it come out like an actual light, you know? And also have some light coming from the background. Okay. And then make a shadow layer, which is right here. Just in case it's a bit too bright, I like to go back in and then darken out the background. Basically what I do with the first shadow layer on the background itself, but this time just to make it even darker. Now as you can see, the lights now look a bit desaturated. That's when I'll go back in and erase it on the second layer. Then I'll go back in here, make it a bit more saturated. Then, because in Silvyre it's always snowing, so then get a snow layer I made. Pretty easy. Just get a brush with a lot of dots, poke it around everywhere, and then blur it. Got a snow layer. I like to lower the opacity to like around 40. just so it's not too, you know, prominent. And that's pretty much it. Oh, one last thing. Sometimes I feel like it's too obvious that the background is a bit, you know, shoddy. So what I would do is convert layer, convert the actual background folder itself to another raster layer, and then I would go to filter, Gaussian blur, and then let's blur it out for this canvas size. Let's blur it out maybe 25. Let me try 35. I'll blur it out to 30. And then create a masking layer. And then just erase the sides, create that depth of field. So background might not look perfect, but once you add the characters in and you try to obfuscate the background as much as possible, it will look pretty nice. And I feel like I should mention, if I were to draw characters, I'd put them under the effects layer or effects folder. So let me just do something random real quick, just so you can see how it looks. Actually, I'm glad that I did this, because now you see how the shadows aren't peeking through and the faces look too bright. Now what I would do, this usually isn't a problem because I'll usually draw in the characters first, but what I would do is I would go to the third light layer, get an eraser, and just erase where their faces are, just so it could blend better. So it could look like that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. First video, so pretty bad, I'm pretty sure, but I hope it helped. That's all I got.